Okay, we got Kevin Warsh's first FOMC meeting today, and it was a bit of a debacle, minor debacle. Start with the dots, 9 of 18 dots pointing to 1 or 2 rate hikes, very aggressive relative to market expectations, though not all that surprising given the tone of the speeches we've got in the last month or so from FOMC members. Warsh himself did not submit a dot. He doesn't like the dots. I find that sort of lame. I mean, the dots are there. You might as well have your say, but whatever. So this led the market to sort of run away with rate expectations on the release of the dots and the statement, which was very succinct. The statement itself actually had a sort of a Warshian productivity argument to it, I thought. And was, I thought, on the dovish side of neutral if you read between the lines, but that was all lost in the shuffle of those dots. And then the press conference was just silly. He might as well just cancel the press conferences. And sorry, he just comes across as a little smug in his coyness about not wanting to say anything. So just cancel the frickin' thing. It was a waste of time. And the problem is that without him providing any insight at all into what his or the committee's reaction function is, all we have is those dots, which he didn't get rid of. They're still there. So as a result, we had the market take pricing for September FOMC from 10 basis points to 21. Is that what the committee really thinks? I think it's a hawkish misinterpretation. But the problem with not answering any questions is that you leave yourself as a committee open to misinterpretation. Warsh seems to want to bring the Fed back to a bygone era where they worked in the backgrounds and they weren't so central to markets and they weren't on the front pages and they'd just pop up every 6 weeks and they'd raise rates a little bit or they'd lower rates. We're not going back. That's fantasy land. The markets are not going to stop pricing things in just because you stop saying things. So Warsh's argument is that all the open mouth operations sort of lock the Fed in. If everybody on the committee is saying, we think we're going to need to do this, then they feel compelled to do that, even if events change. Okay, fine, but the converse is also true. In other words, if they don't guide the market and the market prices in a hike for July or September, they're going to have to hike or they're going to cause a volatility event. If the market's 85, 90% price for a hike and they don't hike, the dollar's going to get smoked, the long end of the market's going to get smoked, and they're going to get at risk of losing credibility. So this is why the expectations management thing has evolved. And I think doing away with it is easier said than done. So instead of being slave to your own forecast, you're just going to end up slave to market expectations that you now have no hand in managing. So this is a recipe for excess volatility in a world that's not like the world that Volcker or Greenspan dealt with. They didn't have trillions of dollars managed by pod shops that when volatility goes up, everybody just gets a robot, taps them on the shoulder, and market liquidity collapses. So this is playing with fire. The market didn't like it. You saw the reaction of equity markets after the press conference. It was just sort of like, this guy is giving us the creeps a little bit. This is going to be a problem. But here we are. It's a new era for Fed policy. And I think it's going to be tricky. And this guy's going to cause a crash at some point, maybe sooner rather than later. We'll see. But I don't like this strategy one bit, nor did the market today. Thanks for watching.